can't hear it.
Let's get to it. Our Save Your Sanity Week continues with information on identifying signs of anxiety and depression in your life. So joining us is a clinical psychologist with over 3.1 million followers on TikTok and the author of the new book, Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? Dr. Julie Smith. Dr. Julie, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So what inspired your TikTok channel?
So I'm a clinical psychologist, so I was offering psychological therapies. And something a lot of people don't realize is that when you go to therapy, my earplugs just fallen out. When you go to therapy, you don't only talk, you also learn a bit about how your mind works and how to influence your mood and how you feel. And so a lot of people found that so helpful. Once they had that bit of education, they were kind of raring to go. You know, they felt that they could manage their mental health day to day really independently. And I didn't see why people had to pay to come and see someone like me to find out these kind of life skills, because although they're skills taught in therapy, they're not therapy skills. I think they're life skills. They're things that we can all use every day. They're things that I use every day. And so my husband said, well, you know, why don't you make it available? Go put something on YouTube or something. And so we started to make a couple of YouTube videos, and then at the same time discovered TikTok. And it was a great way to reach lots of people. You know, we tried to make these really bite-sized videos with really short messages in them. And apparently people were hungry for that kind of information. So, yeah, Absolutely. I mean, 2 years later, here we are.
So how do you identify anxiety versus nervousness? What's the difference?
Sure. So I guess, you know, everybody has anxious days, right? Everybody has that feeling occasionally when you are feeling afraid or nervous about something. That's a normal part of being human. When people talk about anxiety disorders, that's different. So that would be a clinical diagnosis that involves feelings of anxiety, but there are lots of other quite specific criteria, diagnostic criteria that you would need to meet in order to receive a diagnosis. But I think what matters more in that situation is not whether you meet the criteria for a diagnosis, but if you're feeling anxious a lot to the point where it's detrimental to you living your life the way you want to live it, then it's worth getting some help with that. And it's worth looking at what ways you can use to manage it. Hence, you know, sharing some of the insights from therapy with the book.
And what about coping with different fears or different phobias? How does one manage that?
Sure. So, I mean, I've got a whole section on sort of anxiety and fear in the book, and talk about how I've dealt with some of my own fears and phobias, actually, and had a sort of fear of heights growing up, and looked at some of the mistakes I made before I perhaps knew some of these skills about how to manage it. And really, I think some of the mistakes that people make when they feel anxious is they do exactly what the anxiety tells them to do, right? Which is escape this situation and then avoid it. Don't go back. So I don't know, right. You go to the supermarket, you feel anxious, and the urge is to get out of there and don't go back. But then in that short period of time, that makes your anxiety go away. You go outside and you get this, oh, phew, I don't have to face that today. And then you feel better. But that's quite addictive, and it increases the anxiety associated with the supermarket in the long term. So when we're kind of dealing with fears and phobias and helping people to overcome them, it involves teaching a few skills about how to stop the anxiety from escalating in the moment, and then allowing those people to do what we call graded exposure. So we spend time in that feared situation using those skills to help manage the fear, so that because your brain, yeah, so you can then have some time in that situation and calm the body.
I'm building anxiety thinking of the list of fears and phobias I have. Let's take a break and come back. We'll talk about depression after this. Stay where you are. We are back with Dr. Julie Smith. Do you have your audio, Kel? Can you hear us?
I have audio now. I apologize. This was the segment I've been looking forward to all week, and so I missed the first half, and forgive me.
I thought you had so much anxiety you just had to watch.
I have it now.
I'll send you the book.
Thank you.
So we're back with Dr. Julie, and I think so many of us have gone through lows and sadness during all of this pandemic, back and forth. What's the difference between that sadness or those lows we feel and being clinically depressed?
I think lots of people have been so badly impacted by the pandemic. Some people have been left with depression, and others have been left with kind of feeling low in mood. And I think it's less important about diagnosing yourself, but it's more important to understand if you're concerned about your mental health or your mood at any point, it's okay to go and get that second opinion. You don't have to have all the clinical criteria and diagnose yourself before you go and reach out for help. You can do that at any point if you're concerned about your mental health.
What are the clinical criteria?
So, low mood is one part of the clinical criteria for depression. So it's not all of it. So you can experience low mood, and that's normal, and that might last a few days. But if that low mood is persistent over longer periods of time, sort of weeks and months, and if it's linked up with other things like sleep disturbance, changes in appetite, changes in weight, problems in your relationships, all sorts of things like that can really kind of contribute to that and could lead to a diagnosis. But again, I would warn against diagnosing yourself. That's what the professionals are for. So if you're worried, go and seek that help.
Good information. And we're going to put more tips up on our website. Thank you, Dr. Julie. We'll see you on TikTok.
Thanks for having me.
There's her book right there, everywhere books are sold.